Everybody, thanks for watching. And just a quick reminder that Whitewashed is now available, as well as the Holy Bible series, books 17 through 19, which would be Esther, Job, and Psalms. Make sure you guys get caught up on that. Anybody who takes advantage of this sale will also receive Whitewash. So if you want to get caught up on it, make sure you guys take advantage of the sale. Also remember, 25 days, Christmas Day, the new site will launch. The new Merkaba Academy Pro app will launch. This will be your final week to get Never Pay Again membership, so take advantage. We're going to get into this video. So this is something that's addressed all throughout, social media, on the internet. And it is the, ethnicity, if you want to say, or the color of the ancient Egyptians and ancient people. Now, this is important because we're talking about history and we understand with this whole, issue with critical race theory, that it's important that we preserve history. It's important that we teach it. And it's crazy for critical race theory to be a thing and for them wanting to get rid of history when it pertains to us, when, a lot of black folks don't even know their own history. A lot of white people don't know the truth about what happened, and they want to just sweep it under the rug. Now, the biggest thing that pisses me off is the fact that, our accomplishments have been jacked, and the thing we can look to the most to say is ours, they want to steal it as well, and that is ancient Egypt. And you have not just black Hebrews, but a lot of, mostly everybody has this thing that we are fixated on Egypt as being our only accomplishment as black people. They don't understand about the kingdoms in Africa and the fact that the royal families around the world before any European royal family came into existence were all black. So something that is easily proven, but it's not hard when you look at the depictions and when you understand that the culture and customs of the ancient Egyptians still exist and live on. Any Africans that fled that land to escape the slavery and the occupation, you can say, of the invaders that came into the country. They fled into lower parts of Africa, and the culture and customs live on, as you can see through a lot of these photos. And there is no doubt when you look at these photos that this is the African civilization and that this is where the culture and customs went to. Now, you're not going to find an Arab civilization. You're not going to find Arabs or Europeans, of course, that resemble what these Africans are showing you, that resemble the ancient Egyptians. You won't find it. So it's a huge debate and argument. You have Arabs that have entire websites, that have social media pages depicting themselves as ancient Egyptians, and they believe as such. Now, for anybody that understands history, it's not even a big deal. But it's a lot of people who don't want to look at history. They just think they know what they know. But clear as day, we understand that, one, we don't get modern day religion. We don't get Judaism. We don't get Christianity. We don't get Islam until after the fall of Egypt. This is important because you can establish what happened. We know the Persians came in and conquered ancient Egypt, and then the Greeks, and then the Romans, who basically merged with the Greeks, and they had a whole era of basically spreading, Christianity, Judaism, the Greco-Roman era, and Hellenization. So this is what this really was. So when you look at the history, and we know later on, once Roman had occupied Egypt, that the Arab conquest happened. And this is how the Arabs and Romans spread throughout northern Africa. So when you go to Morocco, those people are a mix of the Arabs and the Romans. So we also understand about Spain. We understand about the Moors being in. We understand about Spain being ruled by black people, by the original Moors. And as I showed you in the Whitewash DVD about the Moorish kings, the Moorish line of kings that existed. So we can pinpoint conquest throughout northern Africa, throughout Egypt, and see exactly what happened. And we can already establish through, not just going to Egypt, but looking at the Africans that still inhabit Egypt and that was, driven out into lower parts of Africa, where the civilization basically, went to recover after these invasions. So the reason why I've been giving you guys videos about this, talked about Serapis and how we can prove via Serapis that the Greeks were trying to force us to worship a white God. This is what Serapis represents. And it's not a coincidence that we get Jesus that looks like him. So we have a history that we can prove showing that they was trying to get us to worship a white God. And then we get Jesus in slavery and we see what happened, where we had this beaten into us to worship this white God. So they whitewashed, our history. We can prove, as I showed you guys when I went to Egypt, one of the Arab curators of the site was showing me how they basically stripped the blackness off a lot of the hieroglyphics, how even on some of the red clay ones, it was black, and they took that off as well. And this is so much that we have as far as evidence to prove what exactly happened. And when we see a lot of these depictions, some people say they wanted to preserve it, but clear as day, they took the painting, the color off. On ones that they can fix, they fixed. But a lot of them, they stripped the color off. We can see when you go into a lot of those. I look at a lot of the reliefs, you can see some are dark, some are pitch black, but they leave it up to, your interpretation of what you want to think or believe as to why the color is the way that it is. But clear as day, these people were jet black, and that's how they describe themselves, as being jet black. And one of the things I wanted to point out, this is not, we're not talking about ancient times. We're not talking about going back 1,000 years, 2000 BC. We're talking about recently. We're talking about black as recently as the early 1900s. If you find some of the old photos, which I provided for you guys in Whitewash, we talked about this, but I'll show some of these photos here. But you can see clear as day, these are early pictures. It's from the early 1900s of Egypt. I mean, look at these people. And a lot of them you have to zoom in, but you don't really have to. But I just zoomed in so you can see that, this is no type of trick. These are dark skinned people. And then it's like, what happened? How did that change? I mean, look at these people. We go over to Nubia. Still, we know they were black, dark skinned. So then when you start to look around the world at indigenous people, we're talking about recently. I'm talking about as early as the 1900s, the early 1900s. And you look in Cambodia. You look in China, Japan. We can go over to Hawaii. This is dark skin. The Hawaiian royal family, dark. Panamanians in Panama, dark. Filipino. We already know about the Dominicans and Puerto Ricans from the Taino. All of this I talked about. Dark skin. This is recent. This is not, 2,000 years ago. And that's something I wanted to make clear so people can understand what I'm talking about. And a lot of this stuff is recent. And you got to understand what took place with slavery and what basically genocide and them pushing, people out of areas that they wanted to control. And then, it's a lot of people died off. There was a lot of race mixing, of course, and they basically tried to breed us out, and they were successful in, making us flee into different parts of the country so they can take the land. And as I said, if this was an Arab civilization, because you believe, Arabs who believe that this land always belonged to them, that they have always been here, that the ancient Egyptians is their people. And as I said, you wouldn't dig up, the bodies of your ancestors. They wouldn't do that. No civilization digs up the bodies of their ancestors and put their bodies on display. If this is, your civilization, if this was an Arab civilization, the pyramids wouldn't be a mystery on how they was built. We could just ask them. It won't be a mystery of, the mystery schools and everything that's happening in Egypt. And you would think if this was their civilization, they would be far ahead of the Europeans if they had that kind of knowledge. So obviously this is not their people. And the only people it fits, of course, is us, and it shows us. And we're the only one that fit as to the reason why things are the way that it is with Egypt, because obviously they didn't want us there. There's no way the Romans lost this land to the Arabs. They allowed them to come in. And I discussed this in previous videos about the whole status quo antebellum after that almost, 700-year war between the Arabs and Rome. And right after that, we get Islam. So it's not a coincidence. You got to look at history and what happens. And they are brainwashing our people in Africa into believing that this is just all a continuation of, ancient Egyptian, beliefs. So you have Ethiopians and people in Africa who believe that Islam is a continuation of Egypt and that the Egyptians were Muslim, even though we know that's absurd. So, this is the type of stuff that they push. But history is important. It's important to understand. And this whole thing with critical race theory is a big deal, especially when we have a lot of our people who don't understand our history and can't teach it. So if it goes away and then, we adults are not willing to learn it and understand the real history, then how are we going to teach it? And I agree, me personally, with, probably shouldn't be talking about it as much, but we should still teach it amongst ourselves. Teach it to our children and get them to understand how things is, not teach it in a hate way to where they're going to be looking at, people with hateful eyes and, worried about things, but how stuff really works. If you can, as an adult, understand it and comprehend it and be able to convey it to a child, but you have to also know that information yourself. What's been changed in your child's school history wise? Because this has been a big debate that if you haven't seen it yet, you're going to hear about it, because a lot of parents and there's a lot of groups coming together to fix this. And it's a battle both ways. You got, white families that saying, I don't want my kid to learn about this stuff because I don't want my kid to feel guilty, even though this has been going on for decades. Then you got, black families that saying, well, this is our history. We need to know what's going on. But then you need to understand what history they're trying to teach. We don't need to learn anymore about, civil rights movement and slavery. Not teaching real history. What's the point? And if you don't know real history to teach your kid, then, you need to teach them that. And that's the whole point. Forget the stuff they want to teach them in school. Teach them the truth. And, that's what they need to know. But definitely understand what's being put out there to your kids in school right now, because it's crazy, the stuff that they teaching that, it's hurting our kids more than it's hurting theirs. Because still at the same time, it's not making it make sense to why we are where we are as people. It's not making it make sense when you tell them slavery was just a few bad people. So that's important. So don't want to make this too long. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and definitely get caught up on those videos. And I'll see you guys next video.